What is free birth? Why does this matter to you? And why would it matter to somebody that's listening right now?
It is allowing your body to birth your baby and not turning it into a medicalized event. Not many of us have avoided the level of indoctrination and programming around birth that exists. Physiological birth refers to your body just doing its process, but part of that process is a perfectly orchestrated cocktail of hormones and chemicals that your body will produce, that our body as women will produce in order to support every phase of the birthing process. What do we all think is happening when a midwife or a doctor or a nurse is sticking their hands up inside a woman's yoni in the middle of her birth process to check how far dilated she is? It doesn't matter how much we've been conditioned, how much our minds say, oh, it's okay, I don't mind these 5 different people checking me and sticking their hands inside me over however many days. Our bodies are like, absolutely not.
If I'm living by any sort of a lie, which could be in my own conscious awareness or other than conscious programming that's running, it's known. I feel it in my heart, in my soul. It's like something's off here. And even if I can't place it, it's evident. Truth just is. Everything else is a fallacy.
When you do it the way I did it with Avery, it is what we are here for. Like as women, it is everything all at once. It is so incredible. It is the most profoundly beautiful, transcendent, ecstatic experience of one's life. This is something that I'm very interested in, is what happens to women after they've handed over their power in their most powerful moment. This is our moment to claim and become all of who we are and to bring life in so that humanity goes on. I cried that day in deep grief for every woman that does not experience what I had just experienced. Tears and tears for what has been stolen from us.
Welcome to the Ascend podcast. We have an incredible guest for you today, the Sarah Hawley, and we're going to be diving into some very, very interesting topics, ranging from free birth, which is a concept that you just introduced me to, and it blew my mind, and potentially sovereignty, the haven, the retreat space, community living that they have established, her and her husband, Joe. And just thank you so much for hopping on, and I'm super stoked to dive in.
My pleasure, Tyler. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I love talking about all those things.
Yes. Where would you like to begin?
Oh, well, I mean, we could quickly talk about Haven. That's obviously where we met. You were out here for a retreat last weekend?
Yeah.
A weekend ago? Yeah, so crazy.
A week and a half.
A week and a half ago. So that was amazing. But yeah, about 2 years ago, we bought 72 acres of land in Central Texas. So we're about 90 minutes east of Austin. And the long-term plan was and continues to be community living, retreat center, permaculture property, and just a new way of life, really. Really starting to embody the things that we were feeling and thinking about. And it has been a long journey and continues. It's a lifelong journey, I suppose. But it's amazing. We have our first community member living out here now with us. And
really?
Tiny home. Yeah, Adrian Ellison lives out here with us. I don't know. No, you didn't meet her. Yeah, so she's been here since February, actually. She was at my birth. Her and Joe were the only 2 people that I had, and my son Luca, my 3-year-old, at my birth. So she moved out here on about the 20th of Feb, and Avery was born on the 23rd. So, yeah.
Wow. That is incredible. What was that like for you to welcome another person into that community, kind of beginning that journey of opening up your own personal family unit to kind of extend the tribe?
It was amazing, and I think she was always involved. So when we bought this property, we put an offer in like literally the day we came and saw it. And then we were like, are we crazy? So we brought all of our friends out here before we went unconditional. So in the like that 2-week window or whatever you have, and she was one of them. We have a photo of that day that we all came out, and we kind of said to everyone that day, like, this is a place that we want to have for all of us, for all of those who feel called to come and live. And so some of those people may still end up out here. Some of them, are doing different things, and that's all beautiful and perfect. But Adrian is the first one of that initial group of people who's actually moved out here. So she's always been involved with the project. So many hands and hearts have already, contributed to everything that this place is. We remodeled the 2 buildings that are here, built a tiny house, replaced a bunch of docks, built a garden. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's been done, a lot of tree clearing and all sorts of things, but many, many people have come out and helped, and she's one of them. So it was definitely, I guess we'd been out here we moved in September last year and she came in February. So not that many months before she came. And I would say it just felt like right and like awesome next step. Like it feels really, really good. And every time we have other people who have stayed out here for a month or two at a time, and it's always just felt like that's what this place wants. That's what this place is. And every time there's people out here, whether it's a retreat like you were here, or it's people who are staying or living here, it feels like the whole place just breathes this sigh of relief or sigh of welcome or whatever it is. But we knew immediately that that's what this place wanted and that's what this place is. We later found out from some of the neighbours on the road that this property was always a gathering place. So a lot of the people that have lived on this road, yeah, it's wild. A lot of the people that have lived on this road have lived here for a really long time, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it might be. And this place has always been like the gathering place for the road, the private road, which is pretty cool.
That's incredible. It is such a beautiful space, both physically, of course, but the energy of the space. I can feel the purity and the intention that's behind the land and how you guys are cultivating it. The style of hospitality in which you serve and show is so beautiful.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, it is. It's a magical place. And we knew that from the moment we came out here. We just looked at each other and were like, this is the place. And in the end, it was the first place we actually visited. We were looking for a year for land, but we were just looking online, and we would, get a lot of emails and alerts and all of that kind of jazz. And then we both saw this one and we're like, did you see that? Did you see that? Yes, let's go see it. And as soon as we came out, we're just like, oh my God, like this is totally it. So it was really cool how easy it was as well, which I think is often the case when things are just in flow,
How do you define synchrodestiny?
Synchrodestiny. Wow. I haven't ever heard that word. So I wouldn't even know how I would define it. Do you want me to have a guess of what it sounds like to me?
Sure.
Synchrodestiny. I mean, it sounds like the destiny of the multitudes, like the destiny of a lot of people, or two people, or a number of people, or a place, or just kind of like everything coming together perfectly into one. I don't know. Tell me, what does it mean?
That's exactly how I interpret it. I just heard Deepak Chopra. I'm doing his 21-day abundance meditation, and so that's every day. There's an abundance meditation. So there's a particular thesis, a Sanskrit, origin, and then there's a meditation that goes with it, and then a little journaling, and it's incredibly powerful. I'm going to be starting my own little group soon too. If you'd like to join, it's great. It's only 15 minutes, and it's just amazing. The ability to go inside. Yes. Yeah. Synchrodestiny. So I think about synchronicity, and, in my perspective, everything lives in the infinite now. So there's no actual separation of time, but because we're in these bodies, we experience the illusion of time, just like a movie. The whole picture's there, but yet we experience it picture by picture, frame by frame. And so synchrodestiny to me feels like when the synchronicities align in such a perfect organic nature. I mean, I literally have chills as we speak. I call them God bumps. And so it's synchrodestiny. It was always meant to be, and it's the story unfolding. And that's what this is feeling like. I mean, a year of searching and not actually, looking at a single property in person.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally feel that. And I feel that with like everyone who comes out here and everyone it's like this moment in time where I always think, oh, imagine if someone had told like 18-year-old Sarah, like, this is what's going to unfold for your life. Like, I would have been like, what? Like, this little girl from Australia, like, what? These are the people, this is the thing, and this is where you'll all end up, and this is what it will be. And so I kind of think of that as well, like the fabric of everything and how perfect everything is, and that it couldn't be any other way than what it is. Sometimes in life we get a little bit like, oh, I don't want this, or I don't want that, or that feels
Mhm.
yuck, or I'm in resistance here, I don't want to let go. But really, when we look back, like nothing could be the way it is without how it has been. And it's all absolutely perfect because it's the journey, it's the intricate fabric of our life that's weaving, pre-weaved. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's all there, right? It's all happening. And it's already happened.
Oh, 100%. It's pretty incredible. There we go. Just snapped a little picture. You look amazing. Radiant, glowing. You have a heart above your head that's LED illuminated, pointing directly to your crown. I mean, you have done such a
We
masterful
lost the
job.
cord for that heart. It's actually an
Oh,
awesome LED light, but we can't find the cord to light it up.
okay. If you send me what the brand is, I'll get you one.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm really curious about this free birth concept. I mean, you put us, you said, hey, anybody that wants to listen, you brought us up to where you're at right now. And there were about a dozen of us in just on the edge of our seats going through your birth process with your first son and how everything's unfolded. And so I'd love to hear from your perspective, what is free birth? Why does this matter to you? And why would it matter to somebody that's listening right now?
Oh, I've got the God bumps now.
Mm.
That was such a beautiful experience as well because there was about half men and half women who chose to attend, which I didn't expect. I thought a bunch of the women would come, but I'm really grateful for the men who attended because I think it's important for humanity. This is my work in the world now, is to walk side by side with women who want to birth freely and birth in sovereignty and birth unobserved, unassisted, and physiologically, because it is our sacred birthright. And I understand now that, in my humble opinion at least, most of the problems that we are all experiencing, or the challenges that we're all experiencing, are coming from the fact that birth has been stolen from us. It's been medicalized, and we have largely forgotten the fact that birth is a purely natural physiological process that will just happen. You don't need anything. And that's really what free birth is. It is allowing your body to birth your baby and not turning it into a medicalized event. So
Mm.
not needing licensed medical midwives, or in like a home birth context, or going to a hospital and having obviously the whole freaking circus show that comes with that. And as we talk, I do want to just declare my bias. Like, I'm 100% biased toward free birth right now. And I don't say any of this to offend anyone who has had a different birth experience or chooses a different birth experience. And I do have an absolute bias and preference, and I want to just speak freely to that, without any judgment or anything on anyone. My first birth, as you mentioned with Luca, my son, was a home birth with a medical midwife that ended up in a hospital transfer. So I've been through that entire scenario. And when I became pregnant with Avery, I started thinking about what I wanted to do for my birth because I was quite, now I know, traumatized by everything
Mm.
that unfolded in my birth with Luca. And so this idea of like, how am I going to birth? What am I going to birth? What am I going to do? Well, not what am I going to birth a baby, but what am I going to do for my birth? Thinking, can I just go to the hospital because that's where I ended up? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And maybe I should do a birth center. Is that kind of like the happy in between? And
Mm.
my friend had a good midwife. Maybe I'll just use that midwife. And it was all very like, it just felt like an admin burden. Like I didn't feel energized by any of it. It felt like something I had to do, not something I wanted to do.
Mm.
And while I was thinking this process through my mind, I heard this voice say, or you could just live your life and birth your baby. And every cell in my being, I mean, I got the God bumps again now, knew that that was the truth. And that was the truth for millennia. That was the truth always until 100 or 150 years ago of hospitalized births.
Of course it is. We all exist here through birth. It came and it happened automatically.
Yep. And I knew a little bit about kind of the history of birth because I had done a bit of that research with Luca, and I had a deep resonance with physiological birth, which simply refers to like allowing your body to just do its thing without anybody doing anything to you or for you or what have you. And I can go into it a little bit more detail in a moment. I knew a little bit about that and had deep resonance with it from the things that I'd read in Luca's birth. And yeah, this voice came through, and I was just like, damn. And then a number of things happened over the coming couple of weeks that were just these synchronicities, synchro destinies, where I was just getting the
Nice.
confirmation. And it was strange because, you know, initially when that voice came through, I didn't know that there was even a thing called free birth. I didn't know that people did this. And admittedly, not very many people do, you know, in 2024
Mm.
because of how much we've medicalized birth globally, really. But I did end up finding some people who had done it, and I came across the Free Birth Society, and they have a podcast and a bunch of education content. And all of this kind of just like fell into my lap in the couple of weeks after I had that weird thought just come through.
Mm.
And I just knew instantly. I listened to one podcast and I sent it to Joe right afterwards, and it was just that like Matrix moment. Like I just took the, which color pill is it? The red
The
one? I
red
always
pill.
forget. Yeah, I just took the red pill. Like I'm fucking terrified, but I'm gonna free birth this baby. And you know, that's
Mm.
the truth. Like I was scared because I had a lifetime of conditioning that birth is a medical event and birth is dangerous and it's scary and that women need to be helped to birth. Like that is literally just like my fundamental belief system, like almost everybody's. But I'd learned too much too quickly, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to free birth, and there's a lot of work I need to do between now and the birth to, you know, actually feel confident and comfortable to do it. And it was a big journey, you know, and that's why one of the reasons why I feel very called to doing this work with women is to walk by a woman's side as she goes on that journey for herself, because not many of us have avoided the level of indoctrination and programming around birth that, you know, exists. So, yeah.
Wow. So when you felt this, obviously, I mean, the God bumps are showing up on you as you reinvigorate this energy and what it felt like. Could you give us some contrasts? What is it? You said some very specific things that I had not heard from anybody before. I think the term you used was birth rape. Yeah, that felt, it hit my heart in such a new way of understanding. And there's the God bumps again. And my daughter, 3.5 years old, and she was birthed in a hospital. And when she came out, you know, she was tossed around like a football, and you know, the stuff goes in the eyes, and you know, wrapping her up, and it's just like, this is so weird. Who concocted this system, and how is it that we've all bought in that this is the way that things ought to be?
Yeah, it's honestly a mess at this point. Yeah, I'd like to explain the like physiological birth in a very simple distillation that will probably just help people understand what I'm talking about, and then why the term birth rape is something that when I first heard felt a lot of resonance to me, and that is what I believe is what's happening. So physiological birth refers to, as I said, your body just doing its process, but part of that process is a perfectly orchestrated cocktail of hormones and chemicals that your body will produce, that our body as women will produce in order to support every phase of the birthing process. So without going through like what exactly happens when, the most important thing to understand is the only time adrenaline comes into your birth in an undisturbed, beautiful birth process, intense but beautiful, is right at the end. Right at the end. So you'll be in like this whatever transcendent state, doing whatever you can to kind of just be in this laboring process. It'll heat up. You'll get to a point where you think you can't do it. And then all of a sudden, like, you'll drop back into your body and it's like, boom, it's on. Like, we're getting this baby out. And it is like any woman who has birthed freely will be able to describe this moment where all of a sudden you come back to center and you're actually in the room again and you're very focused and the baby will be out. Usually, you know, it could be within 30 seconds, could be a couple minutes, could be 10 or 15, but it's like, that's when it's happening. And that's what the adrenaline's for. The adrenaline is just like, all right, let's come back from the transcendent ethers and let's just get this baby out. And you need to be alert so that you're, you know, caring for your baby the moment it's out and all of that kind of thing. Now, the only other purpose adrenaline would serve in a birth is if you were in a cave in your laboring process and a saber-toothed tiger comes in or whatever, and all of a sudden this is no longer a safe place to birth. So the adrenaline courses through your body because you are not at that final stage that I was just talking about where the baby's about to come. The adrenaline does the opposite. It shuts down your labor so that you can get yourself to a safe place. Happens to all animals. Cats will birth 2 kittens, have a predator come, pick those 2 up, take them away, get to another safe spot, and then birth the rest of the kittens. Like, it's,
of course,
perfect. So the question I pose to everyone is, what do we all think is happening when a midwife or a doctor or a nurse is sticking their hands up inside a woman's yoni in the middle of her birth process to check how far dilated she is? It doesn't matter how much we've been conditioned, how much our minds say, oh, it's okay, I don't mind these 5 different people checking me and sticking their hands inside me over however many days or hours my labor is. Our bodies are like, absolutely not. Like, what the hell? This is not safe. Like, this is not meant to be happening. And that adrenaline is, you know, potentially coming into our system, and then the birth shuts down or slows down or is not progressing or whatever these terms they use in the hospital, at which point they then start using all of their interventions. I mean, putting hands inside someone's yoni is itself an intervention. I mean, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't, like, the baby's going to come out whether you know how dilated you are or not. Like, this is the absurdity about a lot of this stuff, is like stopping and actually asking, like, why are we even doing all of this stuff? Like, you know, a woman becomes pregnant, her body goes through a process to grow a baby, and eventually it comes out. Like, that's the simplicity of it. And sometimes we have miscarriages, and sometimes we have stillbirths, and there is all sorts of things that happen that are also things that we need to come face to face with in preparation for a free birth, because we're no longer outsourcing responsibility and the idea of our safety to an institution that doesn't actually prevent any of those things, but just makes us feel like maybe it would. But it doesn't. Mothers still die in hospitals. Babies still die in hospitals, sadly. It's always a tragedy. It's always a sad thing that would occur, but it is a part of life. And to live is to be at risk. So thinking that we can somehow, you know, remove all of the risk by going to the hospital is not accurate.
I just want to double click on that for a second. To live is to risk. Risk and life are one and the same. It's the riskiest thing we could possibly do, is be alive, because there's no way out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variables. Like, you know, ironically, in our retreat the other weekend, when I was in my experience with the grandmother, I went through a process where I was back in the womb and I rebirthed myself. And I stayed in the womb for a really long time because I wasn't really ready to come out. And I knew that I was making the decision if I wanted to come out or not. So it's just ironic that we're talking about all this, but I really connected with my 2 boys in those moments, and the bravery that they had, the courage that they had in those moments when my body started laboring and they started saying, okay, I'm ready, we're doing it in concert, we're doing it together. But they chose to come and to come through. And I was back in the womb and I was really feeling that of like in the womb and in the infinite, everything that we don't want for anything. In the womb, we don't want for anything. We are just existing and we can sleep and wake and eat and like it's just all happening. There's nothing there. And that is the case in the infinite as well. To come into this human experience is to be like, oh, a lot of shit's going to happen. Like, are we sure? So facing that kind of truth, I think, is really healthy, really healthy.
100%. I mean, truth is the only way that we can actually live. If I'm living by any sort of a lie, which could be in my own conscious awareness or other than conscious programming that's running, it's known. Like I feel it in my heart, in my soul. It's like something's off here. And even if I can't place it, it's evident, right? Truth just is. Everything else is a fallacy.
That's it. And the truth is, no woman needs hands getting stuck up all inside her and other things, instruments stuck up all inside her when she's in a birthing process. And, I'll caveat it with very, very few births may become medical events, just like very few moments in life can become medical events. So that's fine. Like that might happen. Just like getting in your car, you may end up having a car accident. You probably won't, but it could happen and you might need medical attention, or you might trip over outside and all of a sudden walking down the path you walk down every day has become a medical event. But like in the day-to-day normal situations, it's not a medical event and none of that stuff needs to be happening. And that's the issue. And that's the birth rape term is, we're doing all of these things to women that is completely unnecessary. Then sending them off and saying postpartum depression is normal. Maybe you could get some medication for that. Don't worry. It's very normal. It's very common. Well, why is it common? Why is it normal? Like that's something we should be looking at as a society if we actually cared, because it's not normal. And if you birth freely and physiologically, your hormones support a natural, beautiful bonding process with your baby. They don't kick you off into depression and disconnection from life and this thing that you need to now be nurturing, because that's how it often feels for women with postpartum depression. Is like it's a thing. It's like I can't even connect with this baby. And
wow, can you illuminate us about the difference between Luca and Avery with that postpartum experience?
Yeah, so very beautifully with Luca, I had come to know his being, his soul, before he came. And I feel like that's like a saving grace that I have, because we had become quite intimate in our conversations, both in plant medicine and in meditation, where he was asking me to be his mother. He was telling me why Joe was his dad, all these kinds of things. But when I birthed him and I progressively gave my power away to different people that were in my birth team, I thought I was birthing with a team. Like I was like, oh yeah, we're all going to birth today, all of us together. When I realized like, no, the only person birthing is me. There's just a bunch of people hanging around actually getting in my way in the end. But that was like a distortion of thinking that I had back then. So anyhow, a bunch of things happened in Luca's birth, from the midwife coming and telling me how to breathe. Like when I'd been breathing a certain way and really feeling good in my body all day, she started telling me, and I'm like, oh, well, she's the expert. I'll do what she says. All of a sudden, I'm in all this excruciating pain. It's really hard to describe this because from, this moment sitting here, I'm like, whoa, why didn't you just, if you felt good and then you didn't feel good, just like backtrack. But like you're in the most vulnerable, open, sensitive, intuitive, like powerful moment of your life. And all these little suggestions, whether they're micro suggestions, like, would you like a blanket? That can send you off into like, oh, I don't feel cold, but they're asking me if I want a blanket. Maybe is my temperature dropping? Like, do I not know something that's happening, or like what is happening? So like these little micro suggestions can send you off. And then certainly if someone starts telling you like, do this, do that, and you've hired that person to help you, then, I started listening. And it culminated in her coming to me after 24 hours and saying, where I'd just taken a rest because I had been coached pushing for 4 hours when my body wasn't ready and nothing was happening, obviously. She told me to have a rest, and then she came in, she sat down by my bed and she said, I think you and I both know it's time to go to the hospital. And I was like, oh, I did not know that. And then the next word she said was, if you get an epidural and Pitocin, you should be able to birth him vaginally and avoid a C-section. So in this very short moment of her words, I've gone from like, I'm birthing my baby at home to I might be having a C-section if I don't like go and do all of the right things. What she was actually saying is I'm no longer either comfortable continuing here with you at home, and most likely my licensing requirements no longer allow me to stay for a longer period of time with you at home. She did not say those things to me, though. She said it as though I didn't really have choices and that I should probably act on this or something really bad might happen. So I went to the hospital, and then I went through the whole hospital thing, which, you know, I tested positive for COVID when I went in there, which was just a whole thing. I mean, I was not sick. I never was sick. I didn't even believe in COVID. But then I had every person that came into the room in hazmat outfits, and Joe and I, like, nobody was allowed to leave the room. Like, Joe and I were not allowed to leave the room. The midwife did not come with me to the hospital, so I was she completely abandoned care at that point in time.
Why did she not come with you?
She said to me that it was because of maybe COVID restrictions at the hospital or something, which may be true. I don't know. It was March 2021, so it was, you know, it was an interesting time in the world. It was March 21? Mm-hmm.
So right after all the craziness went down?
Well, March 2020.
Oh, it was 2020.
Yeah, so it was a year after, like, the start of COVID, yeah. So I don't know the rules of the hospitals at the different times, but she told me that they won't let her. So that's why she didn't come. I don't know. And in the hospital, you know, so I ended up birthing Luca with another hour of coached pushing during which I couldn't feel my body because I had an epidural. So I was asking if it was doing anything, and then they got a mirror so that I could see, and it was kind of like okay for a while. There was like one midwife in there, and Joe and I were like, oh, this is not as bad as we thought. And then as soon as he actually started crowning, I had 5 or 6 people around me cracking jokes, asking Joe if he was okay because he was breathing with me and telling him like he might need to sort himself out. And like, it was crazy.
What?
I was kind of in a bit of another place, but I remember parts of it, and Joe remembers a lot of it. Like, it was just like, oh, here we all are for our process. Let's do our thing and crack jokes. And we're just like, whatever, like literally zero reverence, zero respect. They're all staring at my yoni. I'm like laid back, legs out, legs up in these stirrup things.
Wow.
Hands are in me, touching me. Like, it is just the grossest thing when I look back and think I'm on my back, splayed open, and people I've never seen before in my life are coming in and staring at my most sacred part while it is doing the most sacred thing that I'm here to do. And my baby came out and, you know, came straight up on my chest, but it was gloves, and put a hat on him, which is unnecessary, and suction his nose and rub his back. And, you know, I've watched the video again since and, you know, nearly threw up with how much is going on for my baby. And knowing that, like, I had a reasonably best case hospital birth, you know, like, it was pretty, as far as it goes, it was like, you know, as good as it can get, essentially, which also makes me sad. But what happened after his birth was, I mean, one, my body was shot to shit. Like, I was just a fucking mess. My pelvic floor was really not in a good way. I had so much swelling. I had torn, which is normal and fine, but they stitched me, and that is not required almost all of the time. This is like a huge thing that nobody knows as well, is like, unless you have like a very, very, very big tear going maybe all the way through to your anus or something like that, like most of these tears will just heal naturally, and letting them heal naturally is the best way, because the fibers, the tear goes like that and the fibers can just kind of go back together. But if you pull them together and stitch them, it's not allowing its natural process to happen.
This seems so obvious while you state it, yet it's just the opposite approach. Can you imagine the first time that somebody said, I'm going to cut this open and remove this, tumor, this hard thing that's growing, and we're going to cut this person, we're going to cut that out, we're going to stitch them back up. I mean, they must have been burnt at a stake. Like, that's witchcraft, and now we've flipped so mechanically within society, so disconnected from the heart and just all mind. It seems like, right, that there's this process, these check boxes, as opposed to a relationship that is unfolding in, as you described so elegantly, the most sacred experience possible. We all exist only through this mechanism. We all
the seed of life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're not a conspiracy theorist, just sit and think about it for a second. Like, what the fuck is going on that they are, whoever they is, whatever it is, whether it's an energy or an institution or whatever you want to think about it, however you want to think about it, like something is up, that we have created such disconnect in this most sacred moment. Because coming out of a birth like that, I mean, so he's pulled out of me. Next thing I know, they are manually removing my placenta. So she's like got her hands up in there telling me it has to come out right now.
No way.
And then I'm getting stitched up. So I've just got my brand new baby on my chest, and I'm having like the first mother, the sacred mother of my son, the placenta, the thing that my body has grown to feed him, to meet his every need, is being pulled out of me. Thankfully, we did not have them cut the cord immediately, and we had to fight for it, but we were able to, keep it attached to him for a while, which is really important as well.
How long?
Usually about 45 minutes to an hour is a nice time to kind of leave it. There is still quite a lot of blood that can be pumping into the baby after the baby is born and the placenta is born. And even if it hasn't, it's a really sacred time for the baby. I mean, the baby has just come out. To sever it from that organ in that exact, one moment later, like, let's just wait a second and settle in to this experience, get the baby to take the breast. So babies are learning to breathe. The placenta is supporting their transition, because blood and all of that is blood and nutrition is pumping into the baby while it's getting breathing going. It's never breathed before, while it's clearing out all of the mucus and the liquid in the lungs and the nasal cavities. While it's doing all of that, it's being oxygenated through the placenta. And technically, when the placenta stops pulsing, most likely the baby's breathing is like decently well established, but there's no rush to sever that connection. And, in contrast, in Avery's birth, we were so quiet and peaceful at home, which I'll go through in a moment. But, I was able to ask Avery, like, are you ready? Like, we kind of had this hour-long glow of just like, oh my God, we did this thing. And then it just got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'd like this placenta off now. Like, we're cozy, we're in bed, he's feeding, he's breathing, everything's really good. And I looked at him and I was like, are you ready? And he just, I don't know. He gave me a yes. Like, I could feel it. I could see it. And so we cut the cord and kind of removed the placenta at that time. But like, there's nothing like that happening in a hospital. Like, are you kidding me? It's fluoro lights and you're fighting for your right to leave it on for more than 30 seconds. So all of this happens when Luca comes out, and my body's a mess. Breastfeeding is incredibly difficult because I can't barely sit. I mean, I can't sit up for like 6 weeks. I'm in really excruciating pain. And then still, I'm still dealing with issues from his birth now, but have healed a lot more of them since free birthing Avery. But I felt like a disconnection. I was like, this soul that I know so well, that I spent so much time communing with, agreeing to be his mother before he was even born, I'm now looking at him like, I don't know what to do with you. Like, what? Like, oh my God, like, who are you? It was so strange. And I had moments in the also saving grace moments when I was in the in between dream state where I'd be with him, his soul, who I knew him to be. And then when I'd wake up and be tired and stressed and all that in those first few days, I'd be back in the like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't compute. I don't understand. Like, who is this baby? And it's such a strange feeling that I know only happened because my body wasn't allowed and he wasn't allowed to just do our natural process. And I was numbed out with medication that probably included fentanyl when he came out, and he would have had the impact and effect of that as well. And that's the truth, you know?
Sarah, as you describe this, it's just so blatantly obvious to me from an objective lens that this is a very foreign process. This does not make harmonious sense. Like, all of us exist through birth. It's happened for as long as we've been around, which is up to debate. And yet here we are in this society where it's cold boxes, sterile, all these people making suggestions, as you described, in the most vulnerable state. I could only imagine. Like, that is literally the most vulnerable state one could probably be in. What could be more vulnerable than I'm literally in labor? I cannot move. I can't actually, I'm experiencing such sensation, right? Which is exactly the design, because this is the human being birth. Like, of course, it's going to be this massive sensory experience. And I imagine soul connected, heart connected on so many different levels.
Amazing. It's like when you do it the way I did it with Avery, it is what we are here for. Like, as women, it is everything all at once. It is so incredible. Like, it is the most profoundly beautiful, transcendent, ecstatic experience of one's life. And you know, in contrast to Luca's birth, where I did feel very high anxiety afterwards and postpartum depression, and went on for 3 years with a lot of negative impacts in my life, relationship, business, money, like so many things, because I'd given away all of my power in birth. And, you know, this is something that I'm very interested in, is what happens to women after they've handed over their power in their most powerful moment. You know, this is our most powerful moment. This is our moment to claim and become all of who we are, and to bring life in so that humanity goes on, and we give all of our power away in that moment. Like, that has a big flow-on effect. And when I contrast that to Avery's birth and you know, how I feel after, the only one day of down that I felt, which is a natural moment when all of the beautiful hormones that have come with a free birth, there is a day where it all sort of like starts to fall away and you're coming back to homeostasis a little, and it's just an adjustment, and it's really not like very intense or anything. And I would barely call it, you know, depression or anything. It's such a short period of time. I cried that day in deep grief for every woman that does not experience what I had just experienced. That was my day. That was my grief. It was just tears and tears for what has been stolen from us.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can we say a prayer?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love you to.
Wow. Let's do it together. I'll start it. To whatever source, divinity, God, the universe, the U-inverse, however one perceives the interconnectedness of everyone and everything in this here experience of reality, this life, this journey that we get to embark on, that our souls have asked for via our parents. We literally came through. There is infinite energy in the moment of inception. It has not been quantifiable thus far. This is life. This is love. This is light. May we be guided. May we be blessed in this process as each and every day so many new souls are birthed into this incredibly complex and diverse and polarizing environment. May the mothers have the wisdom to know their own strength, their own power. Hear Me Roar, the podcast that's coming up. Can't wait for that, Sarah. Oh my goodness. So much gratitude for you coming through and sharing what is absolutely profound and yet is just right underneath our eyes, our ears, our minds, and our hearts on a consistent basis, because the programs run so deep and they don't have to. We can all come home to our heart, to our soul, to ourselves, and emanate and radiate from a pure place of love that is truly unconditioned. Aho.
Oh, moved me to tears. Yeah, I mean, my prayer, in addition, is just to be, I'm here, like I'm laying down this is my life now. This is my work in the world to help this particular piece of awakening happen, this remembering. And that's what it is, it is a remembering. And I pray to be used in the most beautiful, expansive, profound way possible as we remember this truth, this beautiful, incredible, powerful aspect of life as a woman and the seed of life. If we can remember the truth of this, that's what I ask, what I pray for. Aho.
Aho. Didn't see this one coming. I call tears holy water. That's right. Joe Dispenza is actually doing data now. They've expanded their research to show through meditation, right, and going internal. And so they're using all these different biomarkers. And one of them is actually tears now that they're measuring. And I don't know what parameters that they're measuring, but they're getting more data points around the healing attributes, because to me, I love it. I cry just about every day. Like, I love it. Yeah, because it's been, for some reason, it's been perverted to feel like a negative thing, or like men don't cry. And the way that I feel is that the closer that I am to my spirit, right, the closer I am to my heart in that center, the more that the emotion expands and the reality of that expands. And so therefore, when you're sharing something and I'm able to connect with it in such a pure way, this is the natural byproduct. It's tears and laughter. Like, that's how we move through everything in life, right?
And those goosebumps. Yeah, yes. It's like the wellspring of emotion. You think about how many ways we can be moved to tears. It's not just grief. It's everything.
I don't know about you, but I often get to tears just from crying, laughing so hard that I literally start crying.
Oh, that's the best. Me and my sister do that all the time. Love it.
Oh, that's awesome. What's it like in Australia for the birth process? Is it similar?
It's pretty similar. Yeah. I mean, I have not, been pregnant in Australia or gone through it myself, but from everyone and everything I know and some of the research that I did during my own exploration process, it's pretty similar. Yeah. Things like C-section rates are, between 30 and 70% in our countries. And
can we double click on that for a second? That is so Yes, because I remember listening to on Aubrey Marcus's podcast, he had who was it? Charles Eisenstein was on, and I can see his face right now. Um, what is his name? He's got the curly hair. Zach Bush. Thank you. And they talked about the process of birth, and it just blew my heart wide open. And the if we want just to be in a mechanical and logical society, the benefits of the bacteria that's able to be passed and transferred, the process of compression, of going through the birth canal and then actually making it out the other side, like an hourglass goes down for a reason. That's how we can actually tell the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that compression is what gets all of the gunk and not gunk, but all the fluids that the baby's been living in. It squeezes it all out so they can take their first breath. So I mean, that's just simply cutting a baby out. They're not going through that squeezing process. They're just being pulled straight out of like a bath of water, essentially. Like, you know, I mean, there's so much that's happening, and this is another one where I'm like, this is just fucking obvious. Like, is it really realistic that 30 to 70% of women are unable to birth, that we have to cut their babies out? Like, how the hell did we survive if that was, you know, humans don't have 50 children. You know, we have, you know, some women have 10, like, you know, for sure. Women have many, or can have many. But by and large, I don't think we're having enough at that rate. If prior to the invention of C-sections, you know, 30 to 70% of women, depending on what hospital you're in, just couldn't do it and would just, like, what would happen? I don't know. Apparently they would just I don't know what would happen. They're just going to stop. Like, you know, and I'm not saying it's not, it's a freaking amazing thing in that very, very rare instance where the baby's got itself into, you know, a really interesting position or whatever it might be. And I mean, even that, like, babies can birth in all sorts of positions. There's pretty few positions that genuinely need to be cut out. But, you know, they will cut out any breech babies almost automatically, which is just that they're like bum first or not in the head down position, which is considered the optimal position. Twins, triplets, things like that. And most hospitals won't even allow you to attempt to birth them. But once again, like, of course, women can birth 2 babies at once, 3 babies at once, like one at a time.
You know, what's coming up for me so clear is the term we use, shortcut. And quite literally, it is a shortcut. And so this baby is actually being robbed of the true process, right? The experience of that all, going through the birth canal, experiencing darkness, I imagine, to light, amniotic fluid to, oh my goodness, I'm in an oxygen air-based environment now. Like, what huge contrast. And so as you were describing things as simple as just keeping the placenta and the umbilical cord connected, it's like, of course, don't we want this to be as easeful as possible for our babies? And if they're getting a shortcut, I can only imagine the imprint of that beginning of life, right? And I would love to understand the data more, the follow-ups on babies that were naturally birthed versus C-sections, because, you know, epigenetics is clear that we actually influence our genetics more than our genetics influence us. So I don't think that somebody is cursed or is, you know, stuck with something, but I believe that a natural birth baby has probably a lot higher opportunity, like a higher mana bar within the game of life, right? More bandwidth to be able to actually handle the contrast that's here and do it from a centered place.
Yes. I mean, so one of the processes I went through was to really dive into my own birth with my mother and to see, like, what actually happened and to think about how that maybe has set me up for my life. I was pulled out of her by forceps after the doctor told her that she had pushed me into her hip, which I don't even know what that would mean, and then told her, you just don't have childbearing hips. So she lives with that story that her body is just broken, and, you know, they got the baby out, but thank God, because, you know, she wouldn't have been able to do it. And my story is like, you know, I've got pulled out. So I got pulled before I got the opportunity to choose to be ready to be there. So thinking about things like that, and this is something I go through with the women I work with, is this exercise of like, what happened in your birth and how has it, you know, actually played a role in your life. But I think it's very interesting because with the C-section or any kind of induction, I mean, they're inducing women at such a high rate. The official stats, I think, are 42% in the United States. I would hesitate. What do you say? Hazard a guess. I think that's what I'm looking for. I would hazard a guess that it's actually a lot higher than that, because some of the things that are, like even drinking castor oil, which is like an old wives' tale, does kick people into labor. That's an induction. It's called a natural induction, but it's still an induction. Anything that we're doing to bring labor on is essentially communicating, I don't trust myself, and baby, I don't trust you to choose when your time is to come. Or the institution is saying, we don't trust you, mama, and we don't trust you, baby, to step forward into life when you're ready, to step forward into your initiation when you're ready. We're going to do it for you. We're going to make the decision. We're going to make it happen the way we think it should happen. I mean, that is literally happening to at least 40% of mothers and babies. Like, you are not capable of choosing when.
It happened during our pregnancy, and it felt like the choiceless choice. You know, I won't speak for Tula's mom here, but I'll speak for myself. And to me, I was so ignorant to the entire birth process, right? I studied, I did my research, but until one goes through the process, I mean, there's nothing like it. Nothing.
And like, where are you getting your information? That's part of the challenge as well, right? Like,
absolutely.
How do we find out when all of it's come from this institution? Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Oh, 100%. There's no interruptions. This is co-creation. Yeah, I just find it so fascinating because it appeared that this was the highest and best good for everybody involved. And hearing this from you causes me internally to know that that's just not the case. This is taking away the sovereignty of our babies and our mothers. And as you said, the mother, literally, thank you, by the way, for being a woman, for being a mother. You are the reason why we get to actually have humans. I can't do that. I can co-create, but I can't actually do that creation process. And so, wow, thank you. I have so much reverence and honor for every woman that is out there, whether they choose to have children or not. Like, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for seeing that and for honoring it. I appreciate it. I think it's important. My reverence for mothering, the mother archetype is so different now, because I too was conditioned, you know, into just mothers kind of just like fade away in our current society. Like, they're just in the background, whereas they should be in the foreground. Like, we should be centering everything around, you know, mothers specifically, and the mother archetype, like the nurturance, the creation. Like, it's such beautiful, important energy for us to have in our cultures and our societies.
Smart societies, to me, would be structured to where there can't be war until the female elders actually approve. And that would prevent probably every war from happening.
I'm sure it would make a big shift.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot right now about mother-centered culture. And, you know, there are actually, that's essentially what matriarchy is. It's not the opposite of patriarchy with hierarchy, but women at the top. It's not that at all. It's mother-centered culture is what matriarchy is. And I'm kind of only scratching the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, I can intuit a lot, but I'm very fascinated by this idea of like, what would society look like if we were centering around mother archetype, versus this hierarchical structure that's predominantly male dominated in the patriarchy that we are currently, hopefully, kind of moving out of. And this is once again not a man and woman thing. It's, you know, it's a lot deeper and more complex than that. But I'm very, very interested in this concept, and something we're bringing to life here at Haven for sure is making sure this is a mother-centered place.
It seems so obvious that hierarchy, right, is masculine, like beginning to end, and there's a ladder, so to speak. People talk about climbing the corporate ladder and whatever that means, right? What am I being a slave to in that environment? Yet, you know, the round table concept, or I would like to take it the next dimension in the spherical concept, is that literally the core of life centers within every woman, right? And that shows up as a brand new baby. And so everything expands from there. And so holiness, I actually relate now, add a W to whole, right? Like a sphere. Oh, of course. And so just like you said, mother centered or nurturing centric, right? That vantage point that everything is equivalent through unique ability. There's no up or down hierarchy here, but we all have different aspects, energy profiles, interests, right? Ways that we're gifted and can serve. So I'm just in full support of you. Like anything that I can do to support you and Joe, Haven, this project. I'm sure Joe will come on here as, you know, the next layers start to unfold and we can actually bring people into the bigger picture, because this is not about one property and one small community. This is a much larger thesis of really coming home, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of Joe and my shared values and why we kind of came together initially, I think, is freedom. And it's been a lifelong exploration for both of us. And I feel like only now are we like really understanding the truth of freedom, which is, you know, that we are men and women walking around on this beautiful planet Earth, and there's a whole lot of shit that's been constructed kind of, well, there's a lot of actual physical constructs, but like there's a whole lot of societal, legal, like a lot of stuff that's just made up and is overlaid on this truth. And, you know, me remembering that I can just live my life and birth my baby has unlocked a level of freedom and a level of understanding, and is kind of like seeing me just be like, whoa, because I've claimed something now for myself. That was always my truth. That was always there. And Joe's very much going down. Yeah. Joe's very much taking the lead for our family and our property on, you know, really understanding sovereignty as it pertains and freedom as it pertains to the legal structures that have been invented and overlaid. And, you know, that would be a great conversation for you guys to have. But yeah, we're just deep in it, in like continued pursuit of like what it really is to be free, which is really just the truth. Like, what really is the truth? Who really are we? And I want to just like really quickly bring a couple of things of Avery's birth in, because I know we're probably going to be coming up on time here. And I said something there that I want to share is, you know, the moment. So I went into labor, and the snapshot is it was about 4.5 hours. So, you know, my body kind of just, and I've recorded the entire story. It's a 54-minute recording. I mean, we're happy to link to that in these if people are interested. That way we don't have to go through the whole thing right now. But the quick snapshot is, you know, I went into labor. My body actually went into like full active labor, as they call it, like right away. So I was just contractions on top of contractions and or surges or whatever you want to call them. Really intense, big sensations. Felt like, what is happening? And after about 3 hours of that, Joe had been sitting in the room witnessing me, and he went out of the room to get a glass of water for himself or something, and I felt a real energy shift when he left. And he'd been doing nothing. He'd literally just been watching me. But I felt like, no, like there's this like little cord to him energetically when he's here that's like, can you fucking see how hard this is? Like, help me. Like there's this little cord of like, victim consciousness, I suppose, like a little bit. And as soon as he left, it's like, boom, I got a self-resource. Like, there's no one here watching me. It doesn't matter. We're birthing. Like, that's the fucking truth. We're birthing. We're in this thing. And it doesn't matter about anything. And so when he came back, I was like, you need to get out. Like, I need to be by myself. And I went in the bath, and I ended up in the bath for, I don't know, 45-ish to an hour, and had gone into what they call transition, where the baby was about to come out. I did not know this at this time. And in the bath, I got into a very transcendent state. It was absolutely incredible. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was going to poop, and I put my hand down, and the baby's head was out. And then his body came right out after that. I did not push.
Whoa.
I did not, like, the baby just came out. There was a sensation. I moved with my body energetically, if that makes sense. But there was no, like, stopping that baby coming out in that moment. So contrasting that to, like, 4 hours of coach pushing at home, another hour of coach pushing to get Luca out, to just like, oh my gosh, he's here. But what I wanted to share was that feeling when Avery was coming through the portal, this kind of like really tight, stretching, but not really stretching isn't the right. It was just this tight compression, but it's happening and it's moving. I remembered that feeling, and I did not remember it from Luca's birth. I remembered it from infinity, from all of my ancestors. My cells remembered that feeling, and my cells said, I know how to do this. Like, we've done this infinite times before. And holy shit, like the way that that connected me to every woman who has ever walked before me, and every woman who walks beside me, and every woman who will walk ahead of me. It's like, we know how to do this. Our bodies know how to do this. We're born to do this.
Our cells turn into selves.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I wanted to share that because that just feels like it was so profound and so powerful, and I can still remember it. I still remember the feeling, and it's an infinite memory. Like, I've always known how to do it. Just so, like, you can think about like what it feels like to take an in-breath or an out-breath, or what it feels like to your mom after, like, you know what that feels like because you're a human being. And as a woman, there is a knowing out of you that your cells know.
Yes. And, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, Avery is like the happiest, joyous little baby, always playing and giggling and laughing around. And, like, doesn't matter who's holding. And again, this is tribal living. This is communal living, where it does take a village. There's a reason why that's a term that's used to describe the process of raising children. I mean, if it's all this pressure put upon, two parents ideally, or one, I mean, that's ridiculous when we can have, aunts and uncles that are constantly around, blood or not, that can all co-create, and we all add our wisdom in different generations together. Babies being with elderly people. Oh my goodness, the youth and vitality that the elderly people experience, and the babies, the wisdom that they get to grow up with. I mean, this is living. This is what we're designed to do and be.
Yeah, Avery is such a little chill pill. Like, he is just a dream. I'm so grateful for him. And he already sleeps through the night, and he's so relaxed. And we didn't leave Haven for 6 weeks after he was born. So that was, you've been here. It's like a womb itself in a lot of ways. Like, it's a nature portal. We're just surrounded by trees. You can't hear any traffic. You just hear the birds and the bees and the insects. And that was his first 6 weeks of life, my first 6 weeks of initiation into motherhood as I know it now. I think every birth is its own reinitiation. We become new mothers every time. Obviously, the first one is potentially the most intense and drastic shift, but there is an initiation that's happening every time. And and he is such a relaxed little guy. And I do feel like, a lot of it is to do with the fact that he came exactly when he was ready, and just so perfectly and so beautifully and so simply. And that's the thing that I will share is like his birth was incredibly intense, and birth is incredibly intense. I did not have an orgasmic birth, which some women do, but I did have an ecstatic birth. I mean, it was transcendent. It was so freaking intense that I, reached a moment where I didn't think I could do it. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done and all of that kind of stuff. But it was the most so mind-blowingly good. It was 1,000 times better than any other thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I have had a really epic life, like a lot of incredible things and incredible adventures, but this just does not compare. And yeah, he just, I don't know, it shows in him, I think.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Sarah, you are incredible.
You are.
Absolutely
Thank you for having
incredible.
me. Thank you for helping me tell this story.
Oh, my pleasure. And we're going to make this incredible. It's going to reach people. And if it only reaches my heart by you sharing this, then the job is complete. I'll carry this frequency forward and this appreciation and this gratitude. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How do our listeners get a hold of you? How do they get in touch?
mysacredbirth.com is my website, and I am not on social media. So that's just a decision I made a couple of years ago, that I'm not interested personally in the frequency of social media and what it's doing in the world. I do understand other people have a different perspective and get a lot out of it, but I am not. So yeah, best way to get me is my website. And I have a closed Telegram group for women who are, wild pregnancy, free birthing, interested, wild mothering, intuitive, this kind of way. So, feel free to, you can find that on the website. Out to me, and I can add you to that.
That's so super fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. I honor you. I love you. And
the love
listeners,
heart. Actual love heart light up there.
Yeah, the love heart. Oh, incredible. All right, listener, thank you so much for making it all the way. You really are one of the rare special beings who is willing and interested to expand your soul and to dive in super deep. I mean, we are now over an hour into this experience, and I have completely shifted. It's been a rebirth process for me. So thank you, Sarah, for this honor and this privilege to actually come on board. Is there any way that people could reach the Haven as well? What would be for the retreats?
Yeah, at haven.com.
What is it?
The website is www.athaven.com.
Athaven.com. Awesome. Sarah Hawley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of course. We'll see you soon.